All right, so we're back for another deep dive, and this time it's Liverpool's 2-1 win against Lille in the Champions League. We've got two articles here. One breaks down the match, the other's more about those player ratings. I mean, red cards, deflected goals, young players stepping up. This one had it all, didn't it?
Oh, it definitely did.
Yeah.
It kept you guessing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, on paper, Lille being down a man for so much of the game, you'd think Liverpool would have just walked it in. But Lille really made them work for it.
Yeah, the articles both mentioned that. It's crazy they even managed to equalize with only 10 men on the pitch. But let's take it back to the beginning. That first half started pretty slow, right? Like we've seen a few times from Liverpool this season.
Yeah, a bit cagey for sure.
Neither side really took control, but then boom, Salah just does what he does, that clinical finish late in the first half.
Yeah, that goal really changed the feeling of the game. Felt like things were opening up.
Totally. And you'd think when Mensandi got that second yellow for the challenge on Diaz, that'd be it for Lille. But they didn't just sit back. They kept pushing forward. And that David goal taking advantage of some less than perfect defending from Liverpool showed they weren't giving up.
You know what's interesting, though? Their resilience, it wasn't just about effort. They actually did some really smart things tactically after going down to 10 men. They pushed their defensive line higher, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it forced Liverpool to play in front of them. Made it harder to get those dangerous runs in behind.
So it wasn't just about defending deep. They were trying to disrupt how Liverpool built up their attacks. Makes sense. And then, of course, we have to talk about Harvey Elliott. He really stole the show. He hasn't had the easiest time getting minutes under Slot this season, has he?
No, not really.
Yeah.
And, you know, he came on as a sub at halftime when it looked like Liverpool had things under control. Makes you wonder what Slot was thinking. Maybe a plan change to bring some energy, or was there a bit of worry about how Liverpool were playing even with the lead?
Well, whatever the thinking was, he definitely made an impact. That winning goal, even with the deflection, was massive. And it wasn't just the goal. It was his movement, his willingness to take on defenders.
Exactly. And when you look at this performance alongside the one against Brentford, you can see something starting to happen. It's not just flashes of potential anymore. There's some real consistency there.
So the question is Harvey Elliott ready to be a key player for Liverpool now? Not just one for the future.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The talent's obviously there, and now it seems like the consistency's coming too. But we know the Premier League's a different beast. Can he keep this up against tougher opponents week in, week out? We'll have to see.
Yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. But while Elliott's goal grabbed the headlines, we can't forget about that new club record Liverpool set. Most minutes without conceding a goal in Europe. Breaking a record set by Benitez, that's not easy.
No, it's not. It really shows how their defense has evolved. Over the last few years, they've become so solid at the back, it's easy to focus on their attack. But their defense has been a huge part of their success this season. It's not just about individual players. It's the whole system working together, the pressing, the communication, the discipline. They're just really hard to break down these days.
All right, so we've got this back and forth game. Lille refusing to lie down, even with a man down, and Harvey Elliott making a statement. Where does all this leave Liverpool moving forward?
Well, first off, they've secured a spot in the round of 16, which was the main goal. But topping the group, that's a big deal too.
Yeah, why is topping the group so important? It's not just about being at the top of the table, is it?
No, definitely not. There are some real advantages. Firstly, it means they can rest some key players in that last group stage match against PSV. Less risk of injuries and fatigue. But maybe even more importantly, it affects their seeding for the knockout rounds.
Okay, so let's break down those seeding advantages. How does that actually impact Liverpool's chances in the tournament?
Well, being top of their group means Liverpool will be seeded for the round of 16 draw. They'll be drawn against a team that finished second in their group. So in theory, they should face a slightly easier opponent than some of the other group winners.
So they might avoid some of the European giants in those early knockout rounds. That's huge in a competition like the Champions League where every game is a battle. But even with a good draw, nothing is guaranteed, right?
Oh, of course not. And that's what makes the Champions League so exciting. Any team can beat anyone on their day. The margins are so small at this level. It really is. You know, it's not just about the tactics and the skills. It's about who can handle the pressure, who can stay focused when it matters most.
So topping the group is good, but there are still challenges ahead, right? The articles mention some potential opponents Liverpool could face in that next round. Who are we looking at?
Well, it's early days, but based on how things are shaping up, there are a few teams that come to mind. Inter Milan, for one.
Yeah.
They could end up finishing second in their group. They're always tough, very experienced in Europe.
Yeah, Inter would be a tricky one. Anyone know?
Borussia Dortmund could be another one to watch out for. They've got a young, exciting team, always a threat going forward. And then there's a team like Atletico Madrid, known for their defense and how organized they are.
All tough teams then. Sounds like no matter who they draw, Liverpool will have a real fight on their hands.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Champions League is a competition where you have to be at your best every single game. There are no easy games at this stage.
You know what's interesting, though, is Liverpool's ability to adapt. This Lille game was a perfect example. They had to adjust to how Lille played after that red card. How important is that adaptability going to be as they progress in the tournament?
Oh, it's crucial. Every opponent is different, and Liverpool will need to tweak their game plan to match. It's one of Klopp's strengths, though, his ability to figure out the opposition and come up with a plan.
Makes sense. We've talked a lot about tactics and strategy, but I want to circle back to Harvey Elliott for a second. What are some of the challenges he might face as he develops, to really secure his place in the Liverpool team?
Well, like with any young player, the first hurdle is consistency. He's shown he can have those brilliant moments, but can he do it week in, week out? The Premier League is a grind, and the pressure is immense.
Yeah, I was looking at some of his performances from last season, and there were times where he seemed to disappear a bit, especially in teams that were more physical.
Right, and he's not the biggest player physically.
Yeah.
The Premier League is tough in that regard. He'll need to get stronger, learn to hold his own against those bigger defenders.
But on the plus side, he's got some amazing mentors at Liverpool, players like Salah and Van Dijk who've been there and done it all.
Yeah, that's priceless.
Yeah.
Having that guidance, that support from the team can make a huge difference for a young player. And you can see that Elliot is taking it all in, learning from the best.
So challenges ahead, but also the perfect place to grow and improve. I want to shift gears a bit and talk about how this Champions League success might affect Liverpool's season in the Premier League. How do you see those two competitions influencing each other?
Well, it's always a balancing act. On one hand, the confidence and momentum from a good run in Europe can really carry over into the Premier League.
But then you've got the issue of all those games, fatigue, having to rotate the squad. Could that end up disrupting their rhythm in the league?
It could, definitely. And that's where Klopp's ability to manage his players comes in. He'll need to be smart about making sure they're ready for every challenge, both physically and mentally. It's a long season, and juggling all those different competitions is never easy.
It really says something about the depth of this Liverpool squad that they can compete at such a high level in both competitions.
No doubt. You need quality players in every position, not just a good starting 11, to be successful in both the league and in Europe.
And that brings us back to Harvey Elliott, doesn't it? His development gives Klopp more options, more flexibility.
Exactly. A good problem for a manager to have. Too many talented players and not enough spots for them all.
Speaking of talented players, let's talk about Liverpool's style of play. One of the articles called it heavy metal football, which I think sums up the intensity perfectly. They're relentless going forward. But this season, their defense has been just as impressive.
It's a powerful combination. That high-energy pressing, constantly winning the ball back and creating chances. But then also that defensive structure that's so tough to break down.
I was reading an interview with Van Dijk the other day, and he was talking about how much they focus on defense in training. It's not just about individual talent. It's about everyone working together, communicating, understanding each other.
And that's what makes them such a tough opponent.
Yeah.
You can't just focus on stopping one or two players. You have to deal with that pressure, that intensity all over the pitch.
Makes sense. So how might other teams try to beat them in the Champions League? What are some of the things they might do to cause problems for Liverpool?
Well, one tactic that teams often use against high-pressing teams is to sit back and defend with a lot of players. Try to frustrate them, limit their space, and then hit them on the counterattack.
So absorb the pressure and then exploit any gaps that open up when Liverpool's fullbacks push forward.
Yeah, I can see that working.
Exactly. Teams like Atletico Madrid are masters at that style of play. They're so disciplined defensively, and they can punish you with players like João Felix and Griezmann on the break.
That would be a clash of styles, for sure. Liverpool's high-powered attack against Atletico's tactical smarts and rock-solid defense.
Oh, it'd be fascinating to see how those two approaches would match up over two legs. That's what's great about the Champions League. These tactical battles between the best teams in Europe.
Okay, so we've talked about Liverpool's strengths, some potential challenges, and even looked ahead at some possible opponents. As we wrap up this part of the deep dive, what are your thoughts on Liverpool's chances in the Champions League this season?
Well, they're definitely one of the favorites, no question about it. They've got the talent, the experience, the manager to win it all. But as we've said, the Champions League is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs, moments of brilliance, and moments of adversity. It's a tournament where anything can happen, and it usually does. But watching this Liverpool team, there's a belief, a confidence about them that makes you think they're ready for the challenge.
And that belief is infectious. It spreads through the team, the stadium, the city. You can feel it at Anfield on those European nights, that special atmosphere that can push a team to another level.
Yeah, you can really feel that energy at Anfield. It's something special. But even beyond the atmosphere, I keep thinking back to that clean sheet record. It's not just a random stat. It shows how their mindset has changed.
For sure. It shows how much work they've put in on the training ground. All that focus on being organized at the back, the way they communicate on the pitch. They've just made themselves so difficult to score against.
And it's not just the defenders, right? It's that pressing, winning the ball back high up the pitch that starts with the forwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone defends Salah Firmino Jota. They all buy into it, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
That collective effort, that unity, it's what makes Liverpool so strong.
You know, one thing I was wondering about was whether the articles mentioned anything about how Liverpool might change their tactics for the knockout rounds. Will they stick with this high-pressing style, or could we see them mix things up a bit?
Well, they did touch on how Klopp might use a more patient approach in certain games, especially against teams that sit back and defend in numbers. So maybe instead of always pressing high, they might focus on keeping the ball, probing for openings, and waiting for the right time to attack.
So a bit more adaptable then. Adjusting to what the opponent does rather than always forcing their own style makes sense, especially against teams that are happy to sit back and absorb pressure.
Exactly. And we saw a bit of that in the Lille game. When Lille went down to 10 men and started defending deeper, Liverpool had to be more patient, move the ball around, and find different ways to break through.
It's all about having different options, right? Being able to adapt to whatever the other team throws at you.
Exactly. That's what separates the good teams from the great teams. Being able to play in different ways, to adjust, to evolve, to find solutions when things get difficult.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, I've got one final question for you. We've talked about tactics, potential opponents, the challenges ahead. But at the end of the day, what's your gut feeling about this Liverpool team? Do they have what it takes to go all the way and win the Champions League?
Well, it's impossible to say for sure, but if I had to pick a team right now, Liverpool would be right up there. They've got the quality, the depth, the experience, and I think most importantly, the belief.
Yeah, there's a feeling this season that it could be their year, isn't there?
There is. They've come close in recent years, and it feels like this could be the time. But it's a long road, and they'll need to be at their best every step of the way. No complacency, no distractions, just pure focus on the goal.
It's going to be an exciting journey, that's for sure. And for you listening in, we hope this deep dive has given you a better idea of what makes Liverpool tick the challenges they face and why so many people think they could win it all.
And remember, it's not just about the results, it's about the journey. Enjoy the tactical battles, the moments of magic, the drama that only the Champions League can bring.
And who knows, maybe this time next year we'll be back here breaking down how Liverpool won the Champions League, celebrating their return to the top of European football.
That would be something special, wouldn't it? But for now, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. The journey's just beginning.
That's right. We've looked at this Lille game, gone deep into the tactics, and considered what challenges might be coming up. But the great thing about football is you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Who knows what surprises are waiting for us?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating look at the world's game.